This week, we're going to be doing radial printmaking, which means that we are going to carve a design onto one piece of styrofoam, and then we're going to print that design 4 times, and we're going to rotate it in a circle as we print it. So what I need to do before I start carving my piece of styrofoam is I need to go ahead and make a sketch. And for this design, we're going to fold our sketch paper in half to make like a triangle, and then we're going to draw a design on one half of that triangle. Your design could be realistic, it could be abstract, it is really up to you. The only rule is that your lines and your shapes need to go all the way to each edge of the paper. So we want to make sure and fill up the whole space by drawing lines that connect from one edge of the paper to the other. You can also draw shapes, but because of the way that the styrofoam works, we're not going to be able to color in any of those shapes. So you can draw the outlines of shapes, but you won't be able to color them. And then I'm just going to make sure that I get some more designs that fill up my whole paper, and I can fill in any empty spaces with some more shapes. Once you have that design filling the whole triangle and all of your lines and shapes are kind of going from one end to another, you can flip it over, and if you can see that pencil through the paper, you can go ahead and start tracing now. I think for most of us, we're gonna need to trace over it with Sharpie in order to be able to see it on the other side. Sharpie on one side. So I'm ready to turn it over, and you can see those lines now showing through. You get to decide if you wanna trace it with pencil on this side, or you could go ahead and just trace it with Sharpie again on this side so that the lines are easy to see. So I would just follow along, and it can help you see the line if you kind of press the paper down. Sometimes if you're having a hard time seeing the lines underneath, if you push that paper down, you'll be able to see those lines better. Now I have my design traced on both sides with Sharpie, so I am ready to open it up, and I can see that really beautiful, interesting pattern that I've created. Before I trace this design onto the styrofoam, I need to flip it over and write my name on the back with a Sharpie. Super important that you do this step with a Sharpie. If you write it on the back with a pencil, it might push through and mess up the smooth side of your artwork. So write your name with a Sharpie first, and then you are ready to get a piece of tape. And you want to get some of the stickiness off of that tape so that it won't tear your sketch later on. So just kind of stick it on your arm, and then it'll be a little bit sticky still, but not too sticky. And then you're just gonna put that tape right along the top, and you should be able to see the Sharpie line through the tape. So I only have it taped in one spot, and that means that I'll be able to lift it up and see my progress. And what I'm going to do next is I am going to trace over all of my lines and all of my shapes with a pencil. It's super important that you do this step with a pencil, because pressing down hard with a pencil is what makes the design show through and carve into the styrofoam. So as you're working, you can kind of lift it up. You can lift up your sketch to make sure that you're getting all of the details, and check and see if there are any shapes or lines that you are missing. And once I have all of my details traced for the first time, I can go ahead and peel my sketch very carefully off of the styrofoam. You want to save your sketch just in case something goes really wrong with the styrofoam, if you still have your sketch, you'll be able to trace it again. What you need to do for the very last step to get your styrofoam print ready is you have to trace over it one more time. And I know that's all we have been doing is tracing and tracing and tracing. Take your time with this very last step because it is the step that counts the most. So I am using a pencil that is sharp. Let me see if you can see that. It's sharp, but it's not like pokey, right? You don't want to tear the styrofoam while you trace on this step. You just want to push the styrofoam down really deeply. And you can feel the difference in those lines, right? Like I can feel that that is a deep line and that line right there is not so deep. If you were to skip this step, when you roll ink on your print, your design wouldn't show through. It would just look like one solid black square, right? So what we're doing right now is we're creating these spaces where the ink will not go. And that's gonna create our design when we print it onto the colorful paper. So I am done carving my design into my styrofoam for the very last step of carving. All of my lines are nice and deep. Also, I want you to notice that I only traced over my lines and I only traced the outline of the shapes. I didn't color anything in. Because of the way that the styrofoam works, coloring it in is not gonna give us a texture that's gonna work very well. So just focus on tracing the outlines of things. Before you start printing tomorrow, there's one last step that you need to do. You need to decide which corner of your stamp you're gonna wanna have point to the middle. So you're gonna be stamping this 4 different times, and each time the same corner is gonna be pointing to the middle of your artwork. So you can kind of look at it. Once you decide which corner you wanna have in the middle, you're gonna turn it over and you're gonna use a Sharpie to draw a black dot. And that is gonna help you out so much when you start printing.